I thought my neighbor was just lonely. Then I found a locked basement. I always thought my neighbor, Mr. Calloway, was just lonely. He was in his 70s, thin as a rake, with a shock of white hair that always looked like he'd just woken up. His wife had passed a few years back, and his only son lived across the country. He'd sit on his porch most evenings, smoking an old wooden pipe, waving at me when I got home from work. I'd wave back, sometimes stop and chat. He wasn't creepy or weird. Just sad. His house was a little rundown but not in a hoarder way. The lawn was trimmed, though yellowing in spots. Curtains drawn on every window. He told me once he liked keeping the world out now that it was just him. I never thought twice about it. We'd exchange pleasantries, talk about the weather, football, local gossip. Sometimes he'd give me vegetables from his garden. In return, I'd help him with little chores, moving furniture, fixing a leaky faucet, shoveling his driveway in winter. But then things started feeling off. It was little things at first. I'd hear noises at night coming from his house when I was out walking the dog. Not TV sounds, not music, more like muffled thuds. Once I swore I heard someone crying, faint but sharp enough to make me stop in the street. The dog growled, ears pricked. Then silence. I asked him about it the next day, jokingly. You hosting a party over there without inviting me? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just the pipes. This old house makes all kinds of racket. That would have been the end of it, except the noises kept happening. Always at night. Always too deliberate to be pipes. Then came the groceries. I offered to pick some up for him when I was heading to the store, and he gave me a list. Mostly normal milk, bread, coffee, but then I noticed things that didn't make sense. Extra large packs of bottled water. Protein shakes. Energy bars. Boxes of diapers, not adult ones, but for children. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe his son was visiting with kids. Maybe he donated to a shelter. I delivered them to him, and he thanked me, tucking everything quickly out of sight before I could ask questions. Still, my gut nagged at me. One evening, about a week later, I was bringing out my trash when I saw him struggling with his own bins. He looked exhausted, sweat dripping down his forehead. I jogged over to help, and that's when I noticed. The trash bags were heavy, too heavy for one old man. And they reeked. Not the normal garbage smell either. Something sharper. Metallic. When I grabbed one, I could swear I felt something shift inside like bones. Small ones. I froze. He must have seen the look on my face, because he snatched the bag from me and muttered, "Old meat gone bad. Don't worry about it." He tossed it in the bin and slammed the lid shut. That night, I didn't sleep. The next few days, I avoided him. But curiosity was an annoying thing. I kept replaying the noises, the groceries, the trash. Something didn't add up. Then fate forced my hand. A storm rolled in one afternoon, the kind that knocks out half the neighborhood's power. My lights flickered but stayed on. His didn't. Around 8 o'clock, he came to my door, rain dripping from his coat. "Sorry to bother you, but my power's out. Mind if I keep some things in your fridge overnight?" I agreed. What else could I do? He brought over a couple of plastic containers and a bag of frozen meat. I put them in, trying not to act weird, but my hands shook. He thanked me and left. But here's the thing. When I walked him back out, I noticed his front door was ajar. Just a crack, but enough to see inside. He hadn't closed it all the way in the rush. And from the dark of his hallway, I swear I heard it. A voice. Weak, trembling. A child voice. "Help." My blood turned to ice. I tried to look past him, but he caught the movement and quickly pulled the door shut. "Drafts," he muttered. "Damn storm." He shuffled off into the rain without another word. That night, I couldn't shake it. I kept pacing, staring at his house through the blinds. Around midnight, I saw him go down to his basement carrying a tray. He didn't come back up for a long time. The next morning, I made up my mind. I needed answers. So when he went out for groceries, I grabbed the spare key he'd once given me in case of emergencies. My heart pounded as I unlocked his door, every nerve screaming at me to stop. But I pushed inside anyway. The house smelled musty, stale. Furniture covered in dust except the recliner by the TV. Curtains drawn tight. I moved quietly, checking room by room. Nothing unusual. Until I found a door to the basement. It had a heavy padlock. That alone was strange. Who locks their basement from the outside? I knelt, studying it, and noticed something that made my stomach drop. The lock wasn't new, it was scratched, dented, like it had then pulled it from the inside. My hands trembled as I reached into my pocket. Last year, when I'd fixed his sink, I'd found a ring of spare keys in a drawer and slipped one on my own keychain without really thinking. Just in case. I tried it. The lock clicked open. I stood there, staring at the black gap of the basement stairs, a smell wafting up I couldn't place. Damp, sour, mixed with something human. And then I heard it again. A voice. Faint. Pleading. "Please, help me." I froze at the top of the stairs, every instinct screaming at me to run. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. "Please, help me." It wasn't in my head. It wasn't pipes. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over 911. But something stopped me. What if I was wrong? What if it was a trick of the storm, or some prank, or I don't know, maybe I was losing my mind. I couldn't call the cops without proof. So I took a breath and started down the stairs. The smell hit harder with every step. Dampness, rot, and something else I couldn't place. The kind of smell that makes your body instinctively recoil. At the bottom, the dim glow of a single bulb swung overhead, casting shadows across the concrete walls. The basement looked normal at first. Storage boxes. Old tools. A washer and dryer. But then I saw the door. It was set into the far wall, heavy wood reinforced with metal, and just like the basement entrance locked from the outside. And behind it, muffled but unmistakable, was crying. I stood frozen, my hands shaking as I reached for the handle. I whispered through the crack. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Silence. Then, a tiny, trembling voice. "Are you here to take me?" My throat closed. My chest tightened. This wasn't just some paranoia. Someone was in there. I fumbled through the keys on my ring, trying one after another. Finally click. The lock gave. I eased the door open, and what I saw inside will never leave me. It was a small room, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. The walls were bare concrete, the only light coming from a lamp on the floor. In the center was a thin mattress, a blanket, and sitting on it was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her hair was matted, her clothes too big and stained, her eyes wide and sunken like she hadn't seen daylight in months. When she saw me, she flinched, curling into herself. "It's okay," I whispered, holding up my hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." She studied me like she didn't know whether to believe it. Then she whispered, Are you a friend of his?" The question hit me like a slap. I shook my head quickly. "No, I live next door." "What's your name?" She hesitated before answering. "Emily." My heart broke. "Emily," I said softly, "I'm going to get you out of here, okay?" She didn't respond, just stared at me with this mix of hope and fear. Like she wanted to believe me but couldn't. I pulled my phone out again, ready to call the police now that I had proof. But before I could dial, I heard it. The front door slamming. Footsteps. Heavy. Coming downstairs. Panic surged through me. I turned to Emily. "Stay quiet. Hide." I shut the door most of the way and darted to the side of the basement just as Mr. Calloway's figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't look frail or sad now. He looked furious. His eyes swept the basement, narrowing when he saw the unlocked door. "Emily." His voice, it was sharp, nothing like the gentle old man I'd known. "Emily, did you open this?" She whimpered. I pressed myself against the wall, praying he wouldn't see me. He stepped closer, muttering, "Can't trust you for a second, can I?" That's when my phone buzzed. A text from my sister, loud and sharp in the silence. Calloway's head snapped toward the sound. His eyes locked on me. And in that moment, I didn't see a lonely old man. I saw something colder. Something dangerous. "Well," he said, his voice low, "looks like you've been a bad neighbor." He started toward me. I bolted. Up the stairs, heart pounding, every step a prayer. Behind me, his footsteps thundered, faster than I'd ever imagined for a man his age. I burst into the kitchen, fumbling for the front door, but he caught me by the collar. His grip was iron, his breath hot on my ear. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed. I twisted, slammed my elbow back into his stomach. He grunted, loosened his grip just enough for me to wrench free. I sprinted out the front door into the street, screaming for help. Lights flicked on in nearby houses. A few neighbors peered out, confused, as I shouted, "Call the police. He's got a child in his basement." Calloway stood in the doorway, chest heaving, eyes burning into me. Then, without a word, he stepped back inside and slammed the door. By the time the cops arrived, I was shaking so hard I could barely explain what happened. I told them everything: the noises, the groceries, the locked basement, Emily. They didn't waste time. They forced their way into the house, stormed the basement, and pulled open the door. But the room was empty. The mattress, the blanket, the lamp, it was all gone. And so was Emily. The cops looked at me like I'd wasted their time. "There's nothing here," one of them said flatly, shining his flashlight across the bare concrete. "Just a storage room." I stammered, pointing at the walls, the floor. There was a mattress. A blanket. A lamp. And a little girl. Her name is Emily. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Sir, we've searched the entire basement. There's no sign of anyone living here." "But I saw her." My voice cracked, desperation clawing at my throat. "She talked to me. She asked me to take her home." The older officer sighed, scribbling something in his notebook. "Maybe you were mistaken. Could have been shadows, could have been a trick of the light. Stress can do strange things to the mind." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just stood there shaking as they packed up and left. When I turned to look, Calloway was standing on his porch, wrapped in his old coat, staring right at me. His face was calm. Almost amused. He gave me a small wave. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face, pale, sunken, terrified. I heard her voice. "Are you here to take me?" The next morning, I tried talking to the cops again, but they brushed me off. "We can't investigate a child who doesn't exist. There's no missing person report matching your description." That's what chilled me most. If Emily wasn't missing, then, what was she? Or worse, what had he done to her? The neighbors started whispering. Word spread that I'd lost it, that I'd broken into Calloway's house and called the cops for nothing. People avoided me on the street. At the grocery store, I heard two women mutter behind me, "Poor guy, probably stressed. Making up stories." Meanwhile, Calloway kept on like nothing had happened. Sitting on his porch, puffing his pipe, smiling politely when people passed. If anything, he seemed happier. Like he'd won. I couldn't let it go. So I started digging. First, I looked into public records. Calloway had lived in the house for over 40 years. His wife died 5 years ago, but there was almost nothing about her online. No obituary, no funeral records, just her name on an old property deed. That was strange. Then I found something even stranger. A newspaper clipping from 1997. A missing child. Her name was Emily. 8 years old. Last seen walking home from school in a town 1 county over. The case went cold. My stomach dropped. The picture in the article, the round cheeks, the straight brown hair, it was her. Older, yes, but still her. The girl I saw in that basement. But if she went missing in 1997, I did the math. She'd be in her 30s by now. Not a child. Not the girl I saw. So what was in that basement? I became obsessed. I watched his house day and night. Sometimes I saw him carrying boxes inside. Sometimes I caught faint noises drifting through the walls. Once, swear on my life, I saw a small shadow move across a curtained window upstairs. Every time I thought about confronting him, my body froze. He'd looked at me that night, when he caught me in the basement. His eyes weren't just angry, they were warning me. I started having nightmares. In them, I'd be standing in his basement, the door shut behind me, the lock snapping closed. I'd turn and see rows of children sitting silently in the dark, eyes wide and hollow. And behind them, Calloway's voice, "You should have minded your own business." One night, unable to stand it anymore, I called the number on the missing child flyer from 1997. It connected to a woman, Emily's mother. Her voice trembled when I told her why I was calling. "She's been gone 28 years, the woman whispered. No one ever found her. I asked what she looked like, how she sounded, and every detail matched the girl in Calloway's basement. But that's impossible, I said. She'd be 36 now. The woman went quiet. Then she said something that chilled me to my bones. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I dream about her. And she's still 8 years old. I know what I saw. I know I'm not crazy. But nobody believes me. The cops won't help. My neighbors think I'm paranoid. So I'm left with one choice. I'm going back into that basement. Not with spare keys this time. Not alone. If I don't update again, it means Calloway caught me before I found proof. Or worse, that I ended up like Emily. And if that happens, and anyone ever finds this post, please, don't let him get away with it. Because whatever he's keeping down there, whoever he's keeping down there, it's not just loneliness. It's something much darker." I didn't tell anyone I was going back. Not the cops, not my sister, not even my closest friend. If I had, they would have tried to stop me. But I couldn't live another day with that basement gnawing at me. So I waited until after midnight. The street was silent, the only sound the buzz of a streetlight and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Calloway's house was dark, except for that single porch light that never seemed to turn off. I slipped across the lawn, crowbar in hand, heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. The back door's lock gave after a few tries. Inside, the air was thick with that same mildew and something sweeter like rotting fruit. The basement door creaked as I pulled it open. I descended slowly, every step groaning under my weight. The air grew colder the deeper I went, until my breath fogged in front of me. When I reached the bottom, I froze. The room that had been empty before was full again. The mattress. The blanket. The lamp. Everything was back, as if it had never been moved. And on the mattress sat Emily. Her big brown eyes locked onto mine. "You came back," she whispered. My throat was dry. "Emily, what's happening here? Why are you still?" I couldn't finish the sentence. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "He doesn't let me leave." I glanced around nervously. "Where is he?" The answer came from behind me. "Right here." I spun around. Calloway stood at the bottom of the stairs, blocking the way out. His face was calm, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You should have left well enough alone," he said softly. I gripped the crowbar tighter. "Who is she? What did you do to her?" His smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's mine. She always has been." Emily whimpered behind me. "Don't let him take me back." Something inside me snapped. I charged at him, swinging the crowbar. He moved faster than he should have been able to, catching my wrist mid-swing. His grip was ice cold, inhuman. I stared into his eyes, and for a split second, I swear I saw them ship dark pools, endless and ancient. "You don't understand," he whispered. "She's mine to keep fed." Confusion and terror blurred together. I yanked free and stumbled toward Emily, grabbing her arm. "We're leaving. Now." I didn't hesitate this time. The moment I got her out of the basement, I dialed 911. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone, but I forced the words out. "My neighbor, he has a child locked in his basement. Please, send someone fast." The dispatcher kept me on the line until the flashing red and blue lights painted the street. I pulled the girl closer, wrapping my jacket around her small frame. She didn't speak. She just pressed herself against me like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. The police stormed the house. They cuffed Calloway and dragged him out screaming. His voice was raw with rage, not fear. She's mine, he bellowed. You don't understand, she belongs to me. I held her tighter, shielding her from his words. The investigation stretched on for weeks. Detectives asked me to repeat everything over and over, every detail of the basement, of the girl, of Calloway's behavior. I gave them everything I could, even when my voice cracked and my stomach churned. But the real nightmare came later. DNA tests confirmed what I hadn't dared imagine. The girl wasn't Calloway's daughter. She was the daughter of Emily Hart, the missing girl from 1997 whose photo I had stared at so many times in old articles. But that wasn't the end of it. The deeper they dug, the more they found. Behind Calloway's house, buried in shallow graves in the woods, they uncovered bones. Not just Emily's. Several sets. Tiny, fragile remains that turned the stomachs of even the most seasoned officers. At first, no one understood. Then the pattern became sickeningly clear. Emily hadn't been the only girl. For years, Calloway had lured, trapped, and used young women. Emily had been one of the first, and she had given birth to the girl I rescued. But she wasn't the only one. There were others. Pregnancies. Children. And when the children became old enough to talk, to ask questions, to escape, he killed them. The girl in my arms was the only one who survived. The police didn't tell me everything, but one of the detectives, a tired-looking man with gray in his beard, broke professional distance just once. He rubbed his temples, looking at me with hollow eyes. You did the right thing calling us. If you hadn't, that girl would have been next. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. Why her? Why let her live? He shook his head. We don't know. Maybe she reminded him of her mother. Maybe he wanted to keep one. Monsters like him don't think in ways that make sense. I looked at the girl through the window of the child advocacy office. She sat in a chair too big for her, swinging her legs, staring down at the floor. She had no idea yet who she really was. That her mother had been a missing girl. That her father had been a monster. That her brothers and sisters' children she never even knew were dead and buried in the woods. My chest tightened. She'd lost everything before she even had a chance to know it. Calloway pled not guilty, of course. His lawyers tried to spin stories, tried to argue mental illness, tried to paint him as some sort of guardian gone astray. But the evidence was too much. The bones. The DNA. The diary one of the girls had hidden in the basement, discovered under the mattress during the search. It painted him for what he was, a predator who had hidden behind loneliness and age, who had preyed on vulnerability, who had built his empire of silence in a suburban neighborhood where no one ever looked too closely. And we hadn't looked. I hadn't looked. I told myself he was just lonely. God help me, I waved to him across the yard. The girl Emily's daughter was placed in protective custody. They don't tell me much, but I know she's safe now, away from him, away from that house. She'll get a chance at something resembling a normal life. But I keep replaying the night I found her. The way she clung to me. The way she whispered, "Take me away." She thought she was just escaping the basement. She didn't know she was escaping him. And she didn't know the truth that she was the last survivor of his secret family, a family built in shadows and destroyed one by one. Sometimes, late at night, I stare at the dark windows of Calloway's abandoned house, now taped off with police markers. The basement door is sealed, the yard is overgrown, but I can still see the outline of the place where he stood when he screamed, "She's mine." And I wonder, did he keep her alive because of love twisted beyond recognition? Or because he wanted her to suffer longer? I don't know. What I do know is this: I thought my neighbor was just lonely. But behind his quiet smile and his endless small talk, he was building a graveyard. And the girl I saved, she's the only one left to tell the story.